throughout a rejoicing nation and world, vast throngs of grateful, happy people celebrate the end of fighting, the dawn of peace. 2 million New Yorkers jam Times Square. It's official. It's all over. It's total victory.
Hello, welcome back to What Is This Weapon? I'm Jonathan, and this is going to be not one, but a series of weapons to look at. Nothing too out of the ordinary, because here at the Armouries we are commemorating, well, the end of the war, Victory in Europe Day, and with a heavy emphasis on Victory over Japan Day, VJ Day. Now, we have had for a number of years on display, our firefight exhibition, which showcases primarily the European theatre, some of the stuff underpinning that, and some of the kind of usual suspects, M1 Garands, Sturmgewehrs, Enfields, Mausers, that kind of thing. Conspicuous by their absence, arguably, are things from the East, the Forgotten War, the Pacific Theatre, whatever you'd like to call it. So what better time than to remedy that with, I think we're going with 5 objects, primarily things that you won't have seen elsewhere in the museum. And the first one we're going to kick off with is the No.5 Rifle. It's here with its bigger brother, the No.4, mainly to make it easy for me to show you, to explain the differences. And I think you can see right away what the most obvious one is. It's a lot shorter. It's actually not that much shorter when you look at it. If you line everything up and we ignore the rubber butt pad, which is handy for anti-slip purposes, but is primarily intended, or was intended before it got really hard, as a recoil mitigation thing, because we've made this thing not just shorter, but lighter. In fact, the requirement from June 1943, the original requirement, was for a lightened No.4 rifle. So that's really what the No.5 is. Try and line that up as best we can. It's a good several inches shorter. It's also significantly lighter, which, as I say, was the specific requirement, not necessarily directly the length, although that was implicit. This was already, by June 43, intended as a jungle weapon. Often nicknamed the jungle carbine for that reason, but it was never part of its official nomenclature. It was never called that officially in any way. So the lightening, the shortening is obvious. The lightening, perhaps the most obvious place to point that out, because a lot of it is hidden, is this bit here. It dips down low. That's a lightening cut. Not a lightning cut, but a lightening cut. They took as many chunks out of the receiver and the barrel as they could, as well as, of course, making the barrel shorter, which makes the thing substantially lighter and more wieldy. Doesn't snag as much on jungle foliage. Quick to bring into the shoulder for snap shooting. Typically in the jungle, you're going to be running across the enemy at very close quarters. Ideally, you'd want a semi-automatic or an automatic weapon for that. But if you are sticking with bolt action for your primary infantry rifle, this is an improvement. Let me just show you the No.4's receiver. We'll do this side by side in a close-up for you, but there's that same bit of the receiver, and you can see the bit of metal that they haven't removed on the No.4. The bolt handle as well is another external difference. So the standard No.4 has this solid bolt handle knob with a flat base. The No.5, this is one of the places where they could go in and take a bit of metal out, so they did. So that's missing there. And you will find that on No.4 rifles later on, but it's a No.5 design feature. The sights, so it's the same design of sight. Again, we'll have to show you this in close-up, but the No.4 goes up to 1,300 yards. The same rear ladder on the No.5 stops at 800. Maybe Henry at 9-Hole Reviews can push this thing out to 800 for us, because that's pretty optimistic. Because this thing was being essentially compromised in the redesign, the accuracy requirement was only up to 400 yards in terms of being as precise, about 4 minutes of angle, something like that, nothing too precise, as the No.4. So it was only required to shoot as accurately as the number 4 out to 400, but you could then push it out to 800 in a pinch. That's the idea. But it's this exact same micrometer adjustable rear sight, which was a change from the original SMLE number 1 rifle to the number 4, carried over to this. So that's your precise adjustment. The aperture raises up and down. And then the battle sight, by far the main sight you're going to be using in the jungle, is this open aperture there. In terms of drills, manual of arms, whatever you want to call it, it's the same. It's intended to stay the same. There's no point changing the safety or anything like that. It's just going to confuse people. Front sight has to be redesigned. So we have this unitary thing here that is a bayonet lug, a flash hider, because the barrel's been cut down. So you've got still burning powder, creating a big old flash out the front that isn't there on the number 4 so much. So we put a cone, a bit like a Bren, on the end, or several submachine guns I could name. And the sights are the same design, except that the protectors are lighter, smaller, and integrated into this component. Speaking of bayonet lug, we do have a change. So the number 4 spike bayonet, this is one of its simplified forms, just a steel spike with a flattened tip. Very, very utilitarian, can't be used as a utility knife or a combat knife. The number 5, interestingly, returned to a cutting edge, as it were. It's essentially a Bowie-esque clipped tip, but it's a cutting blade, intended to be used as a fighting knife if required, but of course primarily still for thrusting. It's a bayonet at the end of the day. And no super advanced bayonet fighting was being taught by this point, but you could, as well as thrusting, you could in theory cut with this thing. Perhaps not recommended. That's not really why it's that shape. But it's interesting that they went back to, well, not back to a sword bayonet, but to a knife bayonet from this. And the Sterling submachine gun, the EM2 rifle, they kind of followed that trend as well. So there we go. That is the British Army and the British Indian Army that got hold of these as well. Has quite the afterlife in Malaya as well in the 1950s, and it's around, I think, into the 1960s. There's one big problem. Cutting out all of those bits of metal and making these other design changes created a problem of split groups. So it's an accuracy issue where shots are not going in one tight group, they're falling into 2 tight groups. Which is clearly not what you want, because one of your shots might be way off at 100, 200, 300 yards. And that was never solved. To do with heating and modifications to the design. We won't go into detail on that this time, but it's an interesting one. Despite not solving that, there was serious consideration given in 1944 to this replacing or supplanting and ultimately replacing the number 4 rifle. An acknowledgement that engagement distances in both world wars and basically all throughout history, except for things like Afghanistan, about 300 meters. So they realized that actually you could just give every soldier this, and the primary weapons in the section are still things like Bren guns, grenades, anti-tank weapons even. We don't necessarily need a full, awkward, long, cumbersome rifle. They didn't do that in the end, and in fact, it will be a long time before we went for really short weapons again. But it's always useful to be able to reach out and shoot to longer distances. And as a bayonet handle, the number 4 superior as well. So that's the number 5. Now, you'd be already thinking, and I've alluded to it, why on earth wouldn't you just go for a submachine gun or machine carbine? Well, they did that as well. Certainly the Aussies did that. So for the next one, we're going to take a look at the Owen machine carbine.
This 26-year-old Australian is the inventor of the Owen gun. The gun pumps out bullets at the rate of 10 a second, and pouring sand over the mechanism can't stop its non-stop performance.
So here is an Australian Owen submachine gun, or machine carbine, being Empire/Commonwealth. Machine carbine is the preferred term. Now this, most of what I'm showing you today is sort of off-the-shelf, standard issue stuff. This is not. This is a prototype Owen gun. And maybe one day we'll come back to this and do a full episode on it. But wanted to show you something a little different in this case. Really distinctive design. People are quite keen on it, I think. Magazine notably on the top. This was thought to be, certainly by the users, to be great for jungle fighting. So we looked at the No.5 bolt action, not ideal for close quarter fighting in the jungle or anywhere else for that matter. Machine carbines, much more like it. You can have semi-automatic. In fact, we have a selector here, I can show you. So we go from the rear, and it's on the prototype, it's a little janky, has to be said, but safe, semi, and auto. So 3 positions from the rear, all the way forward for automatic, which sort of makes sense. There's just a little screw there to stop the very thin sheet steel selector. These things changed over time. There are various sub-variants of them, and this is a prototype, as mentioned. So I was talking about the magazine being on the top. Why is that good in the jungle? Well, if you've ever seen anyone with a Sten gun or anything else with a magazine sticking out the side, like the Japanese Type 100, magazines sticking out the side are apt to get caught on trees, roots, creepers as you're moving through the jungle. Because you're taller than the gun when it's down in the ready position or at the hip, however you're carrying it, you've no worry about this snagging on anything, if you turn it sideways. So the magazine on the top, like a Bren gun, kind of makes sense. And it was also fairly well sealed against dirt, leaves, twigs that might get into the action. We have the charging handle, cocking handle at the rear there. So it's open bolt, so that's it cocked, flies forward to fire the first shot and then blows back. It's kind of nicely out of the way. There's nothing up front. Stuff's not going to land in it, go in it when you go down in the prone, say. It's not fully sealed by any means, but it doesn't have a great big slot down the side of it like a Sten gun. So that was a definite benefit. This is, by the way, the work of Evelyn Owen, one of the blokes in sheds of history, who came up with this really intriguing design. A little hefty, maybe, a bit more than a Sten, but a lot less than a Thompson. So absolutely fine weight-wise, I would say. Balanced quite well. You can definitely work with it with one hand if you need to. You need your other hand free for stuff. Easy disassembly here to remove the barrel. One of the other features of it. So this was designed originally in 1938 by Evelyn Owen and then picked up by Lysitz, I suspect it's pronounced. Australians, please correct me. Lysitz Engineering. In fact, it says on the side here on this prototype, very faintly, hopefully we can show you, stamped in the name of the company. They picked it up, championed it, manufactured the prototypes, got it into testing, but it was really delayed. The Australian government seemed to drag its heels a little bit, and this didn't get into service until, I think, late 1943, but that puts it squarely where it needs to be in time for significant fighting in the jungle. I've had to borrow a magazine from one of our other Owens. I think we only have 2, weirdly enough, dedicated Owen gun mags. One is on display, in the display that you'll see if you come and visit. And this is the other one. It's from one of the camouflage painted guns, hence it's this greeny colour. We have a very well protected, well, it's not protected, but we have a low profile magazine catch here. So it's not apt to get hit by anything and dislodge the mag. Quite positive, but big, easy to reach when you need it to, but out the way otherwise. Quite a good design. Very simple, just sheet steel, and the gun itself is simple as well. It's one of the tube guns, as we tend to call them nowadays, with some flat steel machining on this one as well. 33 round magazine on the Owen gun. Sometimes you see it quoted as 30. I don't know if they were ever downloaded for reliability, but with the extra assist from gravity, I suspect not. So extra 3 rounds over, well, things that have 30 round mags. Really compact as well. You can see how the receiver, it's not a bullpup, but the distance between the magazine feed and the pistol grip, the arrangement of the bolt, there's a lot of weight over the back. That's what makes it quite wieldy with one hand if you need it to be, and the double grips, and also on this one, compensator cuts. All of those things come together, as well as this appreciable weight of the thing to make it very controllable. Anecdotally, from the accounts that we have, it was a very controllable weapon. This became the main submachine gun of the Australian forces. 45,000 were produced by 1945, presumably later in 1945. As for Evelyn Owen, things didn't end brilliantly for him, unfortunately. I believe he struggled with alcoholism and died relatively young, which is a sad story. But he gave Australia and firearms history quite an impressive legacy with this thing. So next up, a light machine gun with a bayonet. That's right, it's the Type 99 from Japan.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a rifle called an Nambu. It's used by Japanese snipers in the Southwest Pacific. It has long range and great accuracy.
So this is the Japanese Type 99 light machine gun, not a Bren gun. Not directly based on the Bren gun either, by the way, although I'm sure they were looking at the Czech light machine guns as part of the program, but nonetheless. Now this won't be on display in our VE/VJ Day case that we've put together, but its immediate predecessor, the Type 96, is in our firefight exhibition. So you will be able to see something adjacent to this. This is standing in for what is in our new display, temporary display, which is the Type 100 submachine gun. We have several of these, 3 of these. Only one of them has a magazine, which is currently being installed as we speak. So submachine gun that quite famously accepts a bayonet, Type 30 bayonet, standard for the Arisaka bolt-action rifle. This one doesn't actually fit, which is maybe speaks to the late war production problems that Japan was experiencing, because it won't clip into place. But anyway, this is just to, if you come to see the display, you will see one of these intact. So instead of that, but wanting to sort of reference the Japanese interest in edged weapons, shall we say, famously a martial culture that favours edged weapons in various ways. Not the only one, the French certainly did as well, the Brits to a certain extent. The Sten gun, Mark II Sten gun, came with a bayonet, just wasn't really used very much. What is very unusual, in fact, I don't know of any other nation that did this, is a bayonet on a light machine gun. There we go. Pretty intimidating looking beast with this fitted, albeit the flash hider extends so far out that your effective insertion depth, if I can put it like that, isn't that much. Enough to be lethal. I don't really, I hesitate to attempt this, but yeah, not really practical for any kind of cutting, slashing action. Obviously you need to fold the bipod up to fire this thing from the hip. That was certainly done. That was done with a Bren gun. Various other light machine guns, the Japanese certainly did it as well. It's quite a hefty piece of kit, this. Very few light machine guns are particularly light. But let's fold up the bipod legs, give you an idea of what this thing is like when it's hefted. Manageable, but it's heavy. And this is with an empty magazine, of course. And yeah, kind of doesn't stick out far enough to really do the job. But Japanese martial culture, so kind of into the bayonet that they couldn't help themselves but to put it on there. And we often look at that and have a bit of a laugh about it. But actually, the Japanese military was being fairly forward-thinking. Their squads, I believe, were actually referred to as machine gun squads. They emphasised the use of the machine gun in a tactical way. And this, this is very comparable to, it's not based on the Bren or the ZB-26 series of guns per se, but influential, I think it's fair to say. But a bit like the Sturmgewehr and the AK, they've completely changed everything about it, if that was a touchstone for them, except for general proportions, the tactical role. Magazine on the top, obviously, is what we key off things like magazine placement and curvature quite a bit as humans. We have this sort of silhouette pattern recognition thing, and we go, oh yes, that's a copy of this. It's really not. But if you were trained on the Bren, you'd be able to operate this thing. Palm the mag off, slap a new one on, or your assistant might. Charging handle on the left side there, but it's more of a sort of MG42-esque vertical handle, not like the Brens. And you can sort of see this as, the bayonet is not, it's both the Japanese military being a bit stuck in the past as far as emphasizing the use of blades, swords, of course, issued to NCOs, and officers had swords as well, bayonets on everything. But they sort of reflect the idea of, in a more sort of forward-looking way, what's now called an assault machine gun. So a machine gun that's short and light, not super light, but enough to be able to carry it forward into the assault phase of an attack, as well as set up in the defense and used in other tactically flexible kind of ways. And, well, if you're going to get close to the enemy, you've got a magazine of rounds, but you've got the ultimate ability to defend yourself if the gun goes empty, or to go in and charge a position and have the ammunition on your gun in reserve without having to, you cannot reload something like this in the assault, firing from the hip or the shoulder, operating as an individual. So it kind of makes sense in the context of Japanese doctrine. So from this to another gun that's easily mistaken for the Bren gun, the Vickers-Berthier light machine gun.
That is a really smooth little light machine gun.
So right after a very Bren-like gun, we have the ultimate Bren-like gun, in that this, the Vickers-Berthier, was up against the Bren in the 1930s, 35 to 37 trials that ended up with the British and other Commonwealth nations, Empire at the time, of course, adopting the famous and very good Czech-designed Bren gun. So this is what you could have won as far as the British are concerned, but the Indian Army did not want to wait for Britain to faff around and decide which one of the several guns that we were looking at was going to be best. They saw the writing on the wall as far as needing to modernize and replace, well, the Lewis gun is a very good gun, but it's big and it's heavy. You need something lighter, more tactically flexible, and that big old pan magazine on the top is not exactly great for fast magazine changes to sustain any kind of rate of fire. So both Britain and British India have decided they want something new, but India is going to shortcut the process and do a more efficient series of trials, and they ended up with the Vickers-Berthier. So the sort of parallel universe Bren gun, really. So the Vickers company have licensed this design. In fact, we have a video on the Vickers-Berthier per se. I think it was a British trials gun. This is very similar, but it's the Indian variant, the Mark III, as adopted by the Indian Army. In fact, let me show you the marking there. Just in there, under the rear sight, we have a very imperial-looking marking, GRI. So these were made at the Ishapur arsenal, which is still in existence and still making weapons. Now, this example looks a little shabby, but that's not because Ishapur didn't know what they were doing. It's because this one has probably literally been through the wars. So, normally, when we show you things on this series or anything else, we'll find the best example we have or the most representative. Sometimes the most representative for what we want to show you is not the best condition, and we'll explain that. In this case, it's because our nicest Mark III, we only have 2 intact Mark IIIs, is in the case ready to be displayed to you if you come and visit it. So this one has not been conserved to museum standards. It would conserve quite nicely, I think, clean up a bit. There's an old sticker label thing on the side here that would need to come off. It's fine. I'm just saying, if you want to see a really nice one, come and see it in the flesh if you can. But very, very similar concept. Even the weight, 22 pounds for the Vickers-Berthier, so maybe a pound lighter than the Bren. That does count. You can sort of see it's a bit more svelte than the Bren. That may translate to less robust because it did perform a bit worse in the trials, British trials, in that respect. But it was slightly more accurate. But the Vickers gun, this Vickers gun, not the famous Vickers gun, gas operated, did perform better on semi-automatic accuracy than the Bren in the trials, but not on automatic, which is, although the Bren was somewhat frequently used on single shot, it's really meant to be used in short bursts. So the Bren was seen to be the superior gun. What came out in the wash anyway in 1937, but India had already gone this way. Now, Ishapur as a single factory could not produce enough in time, you know, still short time before things kick off. So they do end up adopting the Bren as a substitute standard light machine gun. Fortunately, the drills are very similar, you know, palm the magazine. It does insert and remove in a very similar way. Cocking handle on the right-hand side in a very similar design. So you're going to be fine running this thing if you're trained, or running the Bren if you're trained on this. So that's it for now for the Vickers-Berthier. So what you've seen here and what you'll see if you come and visit is a small selection of guns that represent the end of the war in the Pacific theatre. Some of them are designed specifically for that theatre. Case of the No.5, it's a very conscious choice of a Western European country thinking we're going to have to fight in the east in the jungle. Otherwise, it's sort of by default. So the Owen gun, the Type 99, they're designed by countries that are pretty sure they're going to have to fight in that type of environment. They're not specialist to that environment, but they're heavily taking it into account when they design them, when they trial them, and then of course that's where they're going to get used for fighting. In this case, the Indian Army prominently is fighting in the Eastern Theatre. So this is a gun of that theatre. It's not a gun necessarily designed with that theatre in mind. But that's the purpose of this display, just to mark the end of the war in those two theatres and to counterpoint our permanent Second World War display, which is also well worth checking out. So this display will be installed and ready for viewing imminently, the 8th of May, which of course is also Victory in Europe Day. So if you're thinking of visiting or you're inspired by that event to go and see something relevant to the end of the Second World War, the Royal Armouries is a good place to do that.
Never before in history has there been greater reason to be thankful for peace. The world's free people are united in their determination that the world's peace shall never be endangered again.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Remember the usual YouTube things, liking, subscribing, all of that is helpful to us. But I also have in front of me what I've been told is called the Jonathan Bundle. Not sure what to make of that, but here it is. We'll put the price up somewhere. So a couple of books written by me and some other nice items, one of which I'm wearing. This very splendid lapel pin of our gold Kalashnikov. There's a key ring of it as well. So if you're looking at more than one thing involving or adjacent to me, you might want to get this. We also have our amazing new exhibition, Gladiators, Heroes of the Colosseum, opening on the 28th of June, which is very exciting. No guns in it, I'm afraid to say, but lots more to enjoy and be inspired by in that. So please do come and see that and visit us at one of our 3 museums if you can't make that one. And we, meanwhile, will be here again next week.